It's Robert Chapman, the publisher, founder of the International Forecaster, and it's always a pleasure, and I'll tell you why. Because Mr. Chapman has made me money, he can make you money. This is the only place, if there's one publication to subscribe to, go to the International Forecaster. It's the only one that's completely unbiased and really tells it the way it is, and the track record of Mr. Chapman is incredible. He has been predicting things 6 months, a year, several years in many cases in advance. It has been absolutely incredible. Your track record is second to none, Mr. Chapman.
Well, thank you very much. That's quite an introduction, and I really appreciate it. We work very hard at it. We've been working at it for 50 years, and I guess it pays off. Somebody was telling me today that at my age, if I continue to work the way I am, my IQ will probably go up. And I found that very encouraging.
Absolutely. At least you're not going to get Alzheimer's. I'm looking at the International Forecaster, and you're talking about the zero interest rates, and that is really hurting seniors. These pension plans, insurance companies, endowments, with the interest rates as low as they are, they're all in trouble, aren't they?
They certainly are, and it's really tragic that the Federal Reserve, that private organization, and other central banks throughout the world have chosen to try to destroy the world economy and finance in order to bring about world government. And that's why they've done what they've done. And the Fed has said recently, through several of their spokesmen, that it's going to be a year or more, and perhaps into 2012, before we see any movement upward in interest rates. And from my point of view, even if they raise interest rates, a paltry like 0.75%, the increase in the debt service interest would be an additional $160 billion a year. And if they had the temerity to raise it to 5%, that's $600 billion a year more in interest that the United States government would have to pay.
Just going out in interest means you get nothing for it. Now, the other thing I'm looking at is these hedge funds and brokerage firms and banks. They're lending 40 times assets. It's business as usual with these, I'll be nice and say people. It's business as usual. They haven't made any changes whatsoever, have they?
Well, they have, but I don't know what the percentage each one of them is using to gamble in the stock market and other casinos, and that's what they've been turned into today. Sure. Because 73% of trades are done out of black boxes, which means there's not many people in the market anymore. And these banks have taken part of the money, and they have redeposited it with the Fed to be able to hold it onto their books as an asset, and they're receiving interest on that, which is greater by about 2.5% than what they're paying for the paper from the Fed itself, which is, the whole thing is insane, because the money that the Fed makes after expenses goes back to the Treasury. So if they're giving interest for the first time ever, started about a year ago, if they're giving interest to these financial institutions, that means that the money that would have gone to the U.S. Treasury on behalf of the American taxpayer is not going there anymore. And it's another form of looting.
Let me ask you a quick question. Are you saying that they're paying these banks to take money?
Absolutely. And how it works is this. They charge them probably 0.75%.
Right.
Maybe 0.5%. And all they have to do is put it on deposit at 2.5%. Or they can buy 10-year U.S. government treasuries, which are notes, and they can get paid. Well, the yield today is around 3.33%, but it recently was 3.5%. So they can come out 2.5% ahead of the game. And that shouldn't be. I mean, this is just outright stealing from the American public. But getting back to the projection of interest rates, they're not going to go up. They can't go up, because if they go up, the whole system will collapse. And so the song and dance that you see that they're going through here is just that. Smoke and mirrors, a song and dance. And they're deceiving people like they do almost every minute of every day. And it goes right along with their lying about everything in the criminal behavior, which they deport themselves.
Now the other thing
it's interesting to me, if you say anything in Congress about this, you get censored by your fellow members. And it's up to the media to expose this. And, of course, the general media is owned by these people, so they're not going to expose anything unless they want it exposed. So it's up to you and I and all the other people in talk radio and writers of newsletters to pinpoint these things and point them out to people and get this information out to the world, not just to the American people. And that's very important. One of the things that really disturbs me about newsletter writers, economists, and analysts, and even some of the talk show hosts, the big ones, they don't want to touch this stuff. They don't want to tell the people the truth.
No, they don't.
People want the truth. They're thirsting for the truth. And I'll tell you how I know that. I was on a program yesterday, and it is not a frontline, very, very popular program. I do it because I like the person who is doing the program. But anyway, they have this service where they tell you where you stand each hour among other talk show hosts. And there's about 50 talk shows going on simultaneously throughout the United States at any given time of the day. And the first four were Rush Limbaugh, Hannity, somebody else I can't remember, and Dr. Laura. Number 5 was myself. Now, they came back and said, who is this guy?
and how many stations is he on versus how many stations is Limbaugh, Dr. Laura, Hannity, with the power of Clear Channel behind them and the power of the banks behind them. More when we get back with Robert Chapman, the international forecaster.
We're talking with Robert Chapman, the international forecaster. To subscribe to the international forecaster, and I said to Mr. Chapman, I said, I pity the fool who didn't invest in gold, and I pity the fool, like Mr. T would say, who doesn't subscribe to the international forecaster. It doesn't cost you. It's going to make you money. 877 479-8178. This is a number that you better have written down. 877-479-8178. We're going to give it out at the end of the program also. 877-479-8178. Right next to it, International Forecaster, subscribe. You can go to my website, ErskineOnRadio.com, or you can go directly to InternationalForecaster.com. InternationalForecaster.com. Just go up to InternationalForecaster.com. Don't forget the word "the" in front of it. Now, Mr. Chapman, a couple of other things that I want to ask you about. We've got a real problem with these states. New York receipts are off 24% through August. U.S. tax receipts off 17.97 year to year. How in the world are you going to keep spending money, healthcare, everything else, with your receipts off that much? This is putting these banks, these municipalities rather, it's putting the federal government, but especially municipalities who can make very few adjustments. These municipal bonds, they're all precarious right now, aren't they?
Well, they certainly are. And we've been warning of this for the past 6 years. And it's coming, it has been coming home to roost, particularly over the last year. And the only way that they can ameliorate the situation under the circumstances is to cut costs, and those costs of people. It's unfortunate, but probably 60 to 65% of municipal costs are employees. And so they're going to have to start cutting. Now, they've had a reprieve this year because part of the money that went into the stimulus package went to the states, and then it filtered down to cities and counties and towns and so on. If they have another stimulus package next year, presumably that would happen again. But they can't keep on doing it indefinitely. It just isn't going to work. In fact, we can't use stimulus packages indefinitely because it's not solving the problem. The problem is those companies that are bankrupt have got to be allowed to go bankrupt. There should be nothing such as too big to fail. And until we purge the system on the classical system of economics, the Austrian school, until that criteria is met, we're going to go on and get deeper and deeper into the mire. And what's going to happen is quicksand is going to take over and suck us under. And that's what's going to happen to America and the world.